Welcome to my workshop about managing your time effectively. Slides. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to be talking about basically is not really like, I'm not just going to like throw a bunch of information at you like, hey, this is what you should do and in this order and it's going to totally work. That's really not what I'm here for, because the thing is that doesn't really work. So I'm going to focus more on sort of like I don't want to say psychological exactly, because disclaimer, I'm not a psychologist, but more of like the thought process, going through, the like overcoming procrastination, managing your time, anxiety, pressure, all of those things. You kind of have to talk about them hand in hand. So yeah, let's get started. So like basically, I can't speak beyond this scope. Like I'm speaking from my own experiences. I'm not a psychologist, I swear. So take this, with, a grain of salt, maybe. I don't know. I like to think I'm pretty, time effective, but who knows? So the first part is basically talking about mindset. I think that this is probably like the key to time management. You can say what you want about like a bunch of like, apps and cool websites that you might want to use, but when it really comes down to it, it's all about your mindset. So as I mentioned, you can download a bunch of like those scheduling apps. You can like build your whole like Notion page and make it really nice and pretty. But at the end of the day, it's really about what works for you. And like I say here, one size does not fit all. So what might work for someone else on the internet does not always work for you. So it's really all about finding, what suits your personality, your work style, your work ethic, and what you want to achieve, basically. So that's why I can't really tell you a set of steps to take to become better at time management, because that's really not how it works at all. So you know yourself better than anyone else, and that's basically why you need to figure out what steps will work for you. And it's a trial and error process. It's not something that happens magically. But on the, I guess, flip side of that is that you can't sort of excuse your behaviors with that. Like, oh, I know I'm like lazy and procrastinate, so that's fine. I'll just live with it. Like, you don't want to just fall into that mindset either. You want to recognize your weaknesses and basically try to fix that. And I totally sound like a psychologist right now, but I'm not. So moving on to that. Your mind is your own worst enemy, basically. That's the number one thing that you have to fight in all of this when it comes down to overcoming procrastination, anxiety about doing work, all of this. So why do we procrastinate? This is something that, again, you have to answer for yourself, because the answer is different for everyone. It could be maybe because you find the work to be too difficult. I do that a lot for sure. I avoid doing physics a lot because I suck at physics. That's just me. You might find the work really boring. I don't know. You might just not want to do it. It's, really unrewarding. Whatever the reasons are, you have to identify those for yourself first. The next thing I would say is to find your triggers. And what I mean by that is there a certain type of work or, something in particular that really just makes you super averse to doing the work? Like I said, for me personally, it's physics. Like if you make me do physics, I can't, I will run away from physics. And that sort of flips that switch in my mind between being logical and like, hey, I need to actually get my work done, versus I don't want to do this because it's scary and difficult. So you got to really identify those sort of trigger points for you first, and think about, why is it that triggers your sort of fight or flight response? And, you want to run away, you don't want to do it, you want to put it off. So got to do a bit of self-reflection there. Then you got to determine your own limits. So you might think that like, if you're studying for like a test next week, you might be like, okay, over the weekend, I'm just going to spend like 5 hours straight studying for this test and I will be good to go. But that doesn't always work in reality, because how many of you can really just work for 5 hours straight and really be 100% effective the entire time? I really doubt anyone can work as industriously, whatever the word is, so that you really got to know your limits. For me, like personally, I think I can work maybe like 30 minutes with being like fully focused, and then after that, I just can't. So you have to identify those things for yourself and try to incorporate that in your sort of process of figuring out your schedule and managing your time. So before I move on to the next section, are there any questions so far? Again, I'm not a psychologist. I feel like I have to keep saying that because I don't want people to come after me like, you said to do this and it didn't work for me. But yeah. All right, seeing as there are no questions, you all can like stop me at any time, honestly. It's a small group, so yeah. Even though it's more about mindset, do you use any organization apps? Yes, I do. I will get into that at the very end. I'll talk about what I personally use. Hint, hint, it's Notion. I love Notion. But I will talk more in depth about that at the end. First, I want to get through, sort of like the thought processy stuff. Yes, I love Forest. That's a good one. I use that a lot. You don't need to use Notion. It's the most like aesthetic way, I think. Like it's like bullet journaling, but you don't have to do it physically. It's all online. So that's kind of like the appeal for it, for me at least, because I like making my Notion really pretty. Or you could be like super like like cut and dry, really effective Notion pages. I don't do that. Anyway, I'm gonna move on to the next section, which is making decisions. Now, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I hear the word making a decision, it just sets off alarm bells in my brain, because making decisions is very hard and you really got to make your brain work for it. And that is super hard to do, regardless of like, even if you think that you're like good at, managing your time and stuff, like it's still a constant decision that you have to make. Like, okay, I need to keep working. I need to keep working. I'm not going to take a break yet, or I'm not going to get distracted yet. It's just a constant decision-making process. So let's talk about, something that I mentioned earlier. I did say not to pay too much attention to kind of those apps and websites that you see a lot, but I'm kind of going to go back on that. So, like I said, I didn't want to just throw a bunch of like tools at you and be like, here, do this, do that, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. That's not how it works. There's no money involved here, so that's not relevant. But I still wanted to cover kind of the more popular techniques for time management, because those are popular for a reason. They work for some people. They may or may not work for you. I think they're still super useful to learn about, because they will help you sort of, I guess, think about how to approach your time management. So I think the number one thing that you always see is, make a to-do list for like every day, right? Just dump all the things that you have to do for the day, write it all down, get super specific about it if you want. You can write about, like eat lunch, make breakfast, whatever, however specific you want to go, you can do that. And it really helps to check things off the list as you go, because it's really like it's really satisfying if you make a list and you check things off and you're like, wow, I'm actually being productive, getting things done. So that's why this to-do list method is really one of the more popular ones. So that's something that may or may not work for you. For you, maybe just looking at a to-do list seems very anxiety inducing, and I totally get that. That happens to me too. So again, this is not, it's something that you can try. Absolutely, you should try it, but it's not like, gonna magically fix everything. The second thing is making a daily routine. So this would be basically kind of an extension of your to-do list. Is you take all the things you have to do for the day and you schedule them like block by block. Like, okay, 7 to 7:30, I'm gonna like eat breakfast or something. 8 to 9, I'm gonna work out, whatever it is. You can schedule every single thing that you do in the day and set out, certain time blocks for it. The catch here, though, is that you don't want to get too restrictive with it. Because if you're setting sort of like a schedule that's like, 7:24 to 7:30 a.m., I am going to, I don't know what you even do in 6 minutes, something that you do in 6 minutes. I don't know, figure it out. But if you get so specific like that, you're leaving no room for any flexibility, anything that could go wrong. Maybe something before that took a little bit longer than you thought, and then your entire schedule afterward is just a little bit offset, and that sucks. So, when it comes to making a daily schedule, you want to, schedule in um, time for things to go wrong, time to be flexible, and also time for what's the word? Relaxation. You don't want to just be like constant, like, work, 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 work. You need to add those breaks in somewhere. So that is another method that could work for you. I've not found this to be actually helpful for me personally. I suck at just like following a schedule like that. But hey, if it works for you, that's awesome. So moving on. So we talked earlier a little bit about the mindset that you have to get into. And so I talked about sort of thinking about it, and now let's talk about what to actually do about it. So I mentioned finding your triggers, the things that make you want to procrastinate. Um, so what do you do about that? How do you overcome that? One solution to that, I would say, is to flip your perspective. So if you see something that you really hate to do, whether it's a physics homework or 141 homework, whatever it is, if you really hate to do it and you know that like it induces that panic, anxiety, procrastination mindset in you, then try thinking about it from a different perspective. So what I found kind of works for me sometimes is to sort of like romanticize the small things. I think I don't want to get too much into like weird like social commentary here, but like sometimes I think we all just need to slow down, take life a little bit more easy, romanticize the small things, enjoy it, live life. So for me, sometimes where I'm like, do I really need to like eat breakfast or can I just, go without that? But I'm like, hold on, wait, hold on, hold on. I want to take my time to make my breakfast, enjoy it. I like cooking. I just don't do it very often, but um but I just kind of have to think about it from a different perspective that like it kind of sets a different tone in your mind and you don't automatically associate that thing with like a feeling of procrastination. Breakfast was a horrible example. I'm sorry that no one no one is scared of making breakfast, but like that was the first thing I thought of. So yeah, so that's like flipping your perspective. Um, and also on that point, actually, so okay, forget the breakfast analogy, just forget that. Um, I guess the other thing would be like, okay, I'm not on TikTok, but like I always see a bunch of like these like trends that are like, like oh, like cottagecore or like dark academia, these kind of like phases that people have. I don't really know TikTok, but like I feel like that's a thing. And that's also honestly another method of flipping your perspective. Because if you're like, ooh, I'm going to pretend I am in a super like cool and old Northeastern like college in the rain, that kind of thing, um, it kind of makes you feel like cool when you're studying. So that's another way to think about things a little bit differently. Um, yeah, rain sounds, oh, I love the rain. I love working during the rain. It's great. So yeah, forget the breakfast example. Moving on. So another thing that I mentioned on that previous slide was determining your limits. So if you figure out that, well, I can only really spend 30 minutes of my time actually fully focused on something, then just, work with that. You don't have to, be working constantly. Just set out those 30-minute blocks throughout the day and actually get your work done, and throw in like some breaks and other errands, different things that you have to do in between that. And if you find that it's really hard to even just get started on something, I face this a lot. I'm just like, even if I know that it's gonna take me like 10 minutes tops, I'm like, I don't want to do it. But it really just, you kind of just have to force yourself into it and just start doing something. It doesn't have to be like amazing at first. It just has to be something, because that little bit of progress, that motivates you to take the next step. So I think we've all heard this a lot, but it really is something that, um, I guess psychologically it's been proven. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know how many times I have to say that. And the other thing is, if it can be done in 5 minutes, do it like right now. This is something like, I don't really like writing emails, but I have to do it really often. So, and I'm like, okay, it's not going to take that long, like 5-10 minutes. So I'm just going to do it right now, because the more I put it off, it becomes bigger in your brain. Like, what's that saying? Like making a mountain out of a molehill or something like that. It's really small. It's really insignificant to everything. But the longer you put it off, the more you think about it and overthink about it, it will just become a lot bigger than it has to be. So, any questions so far? Anything? Going once, going twice. All right, moving on. So, another thing is identifying your work style. This is, again, really similar to the previous, what was the last thing I talked about? Finding your triggers, yes. So this is kind of like identifying how you work the best. Are you able to, like, once you get started on something, are you really able to just continue with that until it's done? Or are you more like, do you get like these spontaneous moments of motivation, where like, like, okay, now I'm gonna work, when you haven't done anything for like the past like 5 hours, because I do that. So you got to identify how you work. Then you got to think about, the other point, sorry, I missed, is thinking about what time of the day you work best in. Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? And on that point, honestly, okay, so I've always been like, oh yeah, I'm a night person. I love the night. It's so peaceful and quiet, and I love that. And I do love being up late at night. But when it comes down to actually working, like, I have to admit to myself that I am just more productive early in the mornings. So, you just kind of have to try different things, see what works for you. Maybe you've been really used to working late at night. Maybe try doing things earlier in the morning, see how that works for you. Maybe it sucks, but maybe it could be better. So, you kind of have to explore these things and just figure out what really works for you. Then the next point I want to come to is prioritization. This is like probably one of the number one things. Sure, let's say that makes sense. This is really key, honestly. So the way that I broke it down here is time, effects, and importance. I tried to make them spell out T to make it easy to remember, but I couldn't find an A word for importance. So I was like, there's an A in importance. I'm just going to use that. So time, effects, and importance. So whenever you have something to do, you have to evaluate how, when do you have to do it by, the time? What would be the effects, the consequences if you didn't get it done, or if you got it done late, whatever it is. And then you have to think about how important it is. Is this going to matter as much like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, 6 months down the road? You have to evaluate all of this when you are prioritizing. And when it comes to it, I know that a lot of people like start to give in to panic. I know I do, because I'm like, oh my God, I have like 10 things that are due tomorrow. I haven't really started on any of them. So I just have to do everything right now at this moment immediately. And you kind of fall into this panic mindset, and then it makes you freeze up and you can't get anything else done. So when it comes to this, prioritization is what's going to help you get past that hurdle. You have to think about, okay, yes, I have a lot of things that are urgent, but which ones are the most important? Like, okay, well, let's say I have a test tomorrow. That seems pretty important, right? But you have to think about, again, its effects. This test, it could be, maybe it's only worth like 10% of your grade and you're doing like fine in the rest of the class. So do you really need an A, necessarily? So that's how you kind of want to think about these things. And that's totally not to like encourage you to dip your classes. But it's more about just like building the skill of evaluating what is really important and being able to, work past that panic. Because once you get stuck in that panic, then you're like, I can't do anything. So, by the way, that test analogy, that's me today. I have a test right after this that I didn't really study for, but it's only worth 10% and I'm doing fine in everything else. So I don't need an A. So there you go, prioritization. Yeah. Are there any questions on this part? I think this is like really important. So I want you guys to like, if anything, take this away because prioritization is really helpful. No. Yuval, that is false. I will send you my grade after I'm done and it will not be an A. You all can vouch for me, everyone. Okay, let's move on. Other techniques, things that you can try. So again, this is all of these things come from a more psychological aspect. These are not things that, they're not a cure-all, that's the phrase. Another thing you can try is doing sprints instead of a marathon. This kind of plays into what I had talked about earlier, but if you feel that you can't work for a sustained period of time, try doing it in like small sprints. And this is something that like, it's helped me a lot when I'm very overwhelmed with a lot of work and I just can't get myself to get started on anything. So what I try doing is like, okay, just 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. I'm going to ignore everything else and just work on this one thing. And it's just 10 minutes. It's not a huge amount of time, but you have to make yourself put 100% effort into that 10 minutes of time. And that, again, like I said, the progress that you make reinforces the, I don't know, good brain signals. I don't know, I'm not a psychologist. But the more progress you make, it's a lot easier to do the rest. So I like doing this sometimes when I get super overwhelmed. So that might work for you. Try it out. I don't know if you're prone to getting overwhelmed, which I do a lot. And the other thing is called habit stacking. Now, this is something that comes from real research. So like psychologist approved. This is something that has been like talked about extensively in like research books from like people who actually study this for a living, not just like random college students who think they're qualified to talk about it. So what is habit stacking in the first place? So it's basically about forming these links between habits and kind of building this association between them. So this example that I have here, again, with the breakfast analogy, I don't know why I wasn't very creative last night, I think. But something that I do actually is, so every morning when like, I work out like almost every morning. And so I'm like, okay, after I get dressed to work out, I'm going to set out all the things that I need to make breakfast because otherwise after I work out, I'm going to be super like tired and sweaty and I don't want to like make breakfast right then. But this like forces me to do that. So I actually make myself eat and not be like a cranky person all day. So that's something that is really, it's been studied. This is like an actual thing. So you can try this with any sort of, like basically anything that you want to get done. It doesn't have to be like super, ambitious. That's the word. But I think the key thing here is to connect something that you already do with something that you want to do. So, I mean, let's say like I don't know, like you brush your teeth every day. I hope you brush your teeth every day. That's something that you do already. It's not really something that you have to force yourself to do. It's just a habit that's been ingrained in you for years. So now try doing this. Right after you brush your teeth, do something else that you need to do. Maybe it could be like 5 minutes of meditation, whatever it is. So, use what you already know how to do and, make it associate with something that you want to be able to do. Habit snowball. I like that phrase. That is a good analogy. So that is habit stacking. Psychologist approved and me approved. Yeah. All right. Moving on to the next section, which is measuring progress. So I've talked a lot about the things you can do, but like I said before, this is sort of an ongoing process. This is not something that just, you just do one thing and it fixes everything. It's something that you have to keep evaluating. You have to keep figuring out that, does this actually work? Or do I need to reevaluate, restructure, find a different method, try a different schedule, whatever it is. So this is also a really key part of managing your time. All right. So let's start with setting goals. This is something that I pulled straight out of Google, so don't quote me on this. But this is a really helpful sort of, foundational format of setting your goals, which is the SMART method. So the goals that you set should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. I think these are pretty self-explanatory, but I'll go into them a bit. So specific, you need to know what you want to achieve. It's not just vague, hey, I want to be famous or something. That's too vague. You got to be more concrete. Measurable, again, this is something, maybe it's in terms of I don't know, how many projects you do, how many hackathons you go to or something. It could be something number related like that. Or it could be a little bit more personal, maybe if you're super creative, artistic, and I don't know, if you're trying to improve on your art. I don't really know how to measure that. I'm not an artist, I can't say. But you need to have some sort of standard to judge yourself against. So that is measurable. Attainable, again, I'm sorry if I'm crushing anyone's dreams by saying this, but it's very unlikely you're going to be the richest person on the planet. It's just, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not trying to discourage anyone, you do you, but you really have to think long and hard if that's the kind of goal that you want to set. So think about it. The next one is being relevant. This one is a little bit more vague to understand, but it's the way that I would think of it, I don't know if everyone on the internet would agree with me on this, but the way I would think about it is something that really is important to you and doesn't detract from your own personal progress, I guess. Okay, I'm a CS major. I like doing this. But let's say I also want to pursue maybe I don't know, maybe I want to be a YouTuber. I don't, but that's the first thing that came to my head. So that's a huge goal on its own, because that's a whole other career, basically. I mean, you can make it a whole other career. So you really have to evaluate, is this something that I want to spend so much time on when it's kind of tangential to what I'm already doing? How much is it going to help me? Am I really going to gain a lot relative to how much I'm putting into it? So think about the relevance of your goal. And finally, time bound. Time is limited, guys. You can't be yeah, I'll do it someday. You gotta set those goals, in a timely way. So that's setting goals using the SMART method. Moving on. Did it move on? Okay. Okay. So this is something that's was revolutionary for me. It seems like such a simple concept in hindsight, but when I first heard about it, I was you can think about things that way? You can actually do this? So what am I even talking about? It's called timing your tasks. That's just what I call it. But it's really an evaluation of how much time you're spending on things. So let's say I have to do physics homework. I'm always bringing up physics because that's what I hate. So let's say that, based on these questions that I have, how long do I want to spend on physics? Well, I kind of have other things to do. So I'm just going to spend an hour doing physics homework. How long do I think it's going to take me? Well, I know I suck at physics, so realistically it's going to take me 6 hours. How long did it actually take after I did it? In reality, well, it took me 10 hours. I don't know. I'm not like, I don't know. Maybe it really took that long. And then you have to ask yourself, well, did you overestimate the time or did you underestimate the time that you were going to take? And when I first started doing this, I noticed that I was severely underestimating like everything. And that's why I was falling so behind and things were piling up and I was getting so overwhelmed because I was like, oh, well, this should take like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. But in reality, it took so much longer and everything else got pushed back. And, so yeah, I mean, there's limited time in the day. So yeah, it sucks if something is going to take you like 12 hours, but you have to know, you have to be able to make a good estimate about it, because if you're sitting there thinking that it's going to take you like only an hour and then 12 hours later you're still doing it, psychologically that's going to put a lot of pressure on you and you're going to be super anxious. So yeah. Alrighty, moving on. This is something that is very important. So I've been talking about a lot of things that you got to do and not do, but at the end of the day, like I said before, you really sometimes just got to take things slow. This whole process of becoming better at time management is not something that happens overnight or even in like a week. It's something that takes months, even years sometimes to build. So you have to be forgiving of yourself. Even if you like create a plan and you're like, okay, I know what I have to do. You followed everything that I talked about so far and you're still not able to do it. That's totally fine, because like I said, people can tell you a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it doesn't always work for everyone. It's totally fine. So try to be more forgiving of yourself if that happens. If you thought you were going to take 2 hours on homework and you really took 6, it's okay. At least, you're putting in the work, you're doing it. So just try being a little bit more forgiving of yourselves. Of course, always be sure to take breaks. I've said this a lot, but overworking doesn't help anyone. Even if you think I don't know if this was just like everyone else, if this was just me in high school or like everyone else had this too, but like at my high school, it was always a thing to brag about like how much little sleep you got every single day. It was like, oh, I only slept 5 hours last night. Like, bitch, I only slept 3 hours last night. I don't know why this was always a thing, but it is so unhealthy. Like, why are you bragging about this? Now I'm like, yeah. Is it still a thing? Okay, I don't know. I don't talk to the same kind of people anymore, so I don't hear that a lot. But yeah, that's, it's just not, it's so toxic. Like, don't do that to yourself. It's not a competition. Don't overwork yourself for the sake of being like, I'm doing more work than everyone else. So yeah. The other thing is to know when to cut your losses. And what I mean by that is basically, again, I'm going to keep going back to like this homework example, but like if you're still doing homework like 12 hours later, even though you thought you would take like super like an hour, maybe think about like, okay, well, do I really need to get this done? Like if it's really taking me this long, I'm sacrificing so much time on this when I have other things to be doing. You kind of just have to cut your losses and say, you know what, I can't do this. It's fine. I'm going to do the other things and just forget this. So, don't make a habit of doing that, of course, but just know that it's okay to do that. And I've definitely had those moments where I'm like stuck on like a problem for so long and I just can't get it. And I'm like, you know what? It's one problem out of like the 10 problems I have to do for homework. And homework is already like 10% of my grade. So it doesn't really matter. So yeah. And pressure to be productive. So this is something that I think I saw a lot of articles about this when the pandemic started. Because it was like, a lot of like, I guess like employers and like students in general were having a lot of pressure put on them. to be more productive, because like, oh, hey, you're at home, you're not commuting anymore, you don't have to do a lot of the regular things that you did normally when doing things in person. So that means you should be more productive because you have more time in the day. But as you all know, I'm sure after a year of living in this situation, that is not how this works at all. Because people have like super different priorities when you're at home all the time. And, just because you're at home, maybe you're not making that 2 hour like commute or whatever, but you've still got to like, I don't know, you have to like take care of like your siblings or something, or, whatever it is. So there was a lot of pressure about this at the start of the pandemic. I think it's gotten a little bit better now, but it's still something to keep in mind that just because you think everyone around you is being like super industrious and productive, everyone else also has these sort of like moments of like anxiety, being overwhelmed, wanting to procrastinating, all of that. So, just trying not to like take it too much to heart, and don't let that like, I guess it's kind of imposter syndrome, but don't let that set in too much. So that is mostly what I have to say. Are there any questions? I always forget to get water before I have to talk for a long time, but what are all the things I keep, yes, question. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that like right after this. Are there any questions like not about that? Because I'm gonna talk about that right now. What keeps me motivated? Oh my God. Okay. So I get this asked like kind of frequently, but it's always so hard to find an answer because I don't know. It's like I don't know if I really am that motivated. Because, these kinds of things that I just talked to y'all about, like I'm still figuring them out for myself too. So, I am not always 100% like motivated. Um, I guess the reason that I keep, doing things that I do, like I generally like get my homework done on time, like I do club things, so that's important. Um, why do I keep doing it? I don't know. It's a mixture of just like, it's something that I want to do, like especially being involved with ACM, like that's something I really love doing. So, if you're passionate about it, it helps you, keep that motivation. In terms of like, keeping up with my classes and stuff, that's a lot harder to do for sure. Um, but I try to remind myself that like, like I'm really trying to like set myself up for the future, like thinking about like me in the future, because like I wasn't always like this, I guess, organized and like put together. Like during high school, I was like a total mess. I would procrastinate all the time and just like not do anything. And so when I started college, I was like, okay, I need like hard reset on this. Because I was like, I really regretted like not being super like hardworking in high school. So you kind of just have to think about like, okay, what is future you gonna think and feel about what you're doing right now? So that's something that's helped keep me motivated. Anyway, are there any other questions before I talk about what I use to, it's just organization words? Yes. Yeah, that was me after high school. I was like, I'm never going back. Like, I don't know if you guys do this, but like a lot of people from my high school, like they keep coming back like year after year, even after they graduate, to like visit teachers and like say hi to like underclassmen who they knew. And I'm like, I'm not going back. Like, I don't even want to be in that environment. But yeah. All right. For the sake of time, I'm just gonna move on. Let us go to the last part, which is I process and what I do. So as I mentioned at the start, I use Notion like number one thing. This is something that I think takes a little bit of time to learn, actually, how to use Notion super effectively. because there's a lot of things that you can do with Notion. And the analogy I gave earlier is that it's kind of like bullet journaling, but like digital. So that's kind of the approach that I've taken towards Notion. Like, yeah, it can be super great for just like organizing things super cut and dry, but I like making it super pretty. And like, Roy, you've seen my Notion. It's like I put so much work into this. Okay. Well, let me just show y'all. So, okay, I just want to do a disclaimer. The design of my Notion is like totally stolen from the Notion subreddit. Like, I am not a creative person at all, but it's just something that I think looks really nice and worked really well for me. So, on that note, this is my Notion. I don't know if you guys can see like the thing moving, because I put it in as it's just not working on my monitor, but I hope you guys can see it actually. Yes? No? Please tell me you can see it. Okay, good. Okay, good. Yeah, so this is the front page of my Notion. I have it divided into these 4 subpages, which is week view, college, personal, and career. I'm going to go into just a few of them, but this is the main page that I have. I keep it super simple because, you know, when I open it, I don't want to be faced with like a bunch of things to do and tasks and things super cluttered. I want it to be really simple, relaxing, kind of ease you into it. So that's why everything's in these sub pages. That's where all the work is. This is just like kind of a nice introduction. I put the weather there because, you know, the weather. I have a lot of these widgets for like the year month progress thingy. I just like doing that. So again, this is all like super like stylistic to me. You can do whatever, but so this is the front page. So I'm going to show you the week view page first. I cannot speak. So this is the top of my week view page. So this is something that I use to basically plan out what I'm going to do each day and how much time I'm going to spend on it. So pretty much every week or like even every day, I go to this page and I write out what are my tasks for the day, how much time am I going to spend on it, if I have to move things around between different days of the week. That's really easy here with Notion. You can just like drag things around. It's empty right now because I didn't want you guys to see the stuff that I have to do, but so this is what I use, and I think it's really helpful to see my week like at a glance, all the things that I have to do, because it just helps me like keep it in my mind, like, okay, this is kind of like what my week ahead is looking like, how busy am I going to be, how flexible can I be with these things. So yeah, that's my week view. Then I'm going to show you the front of my college page, which, if it loads, I hope it loads. It will eventually. There we go. Yeah, so this is my main like college page where it has everything to do with all my classes. The calendar that you see right now is from winter quarter actually, because my one for this quarter is really bare. It's just like the structure of my classes this quarter is they're not very heavy on like regular assignments. They're more project based, so I don't really have a lot to put on my calendar, but I wanted to show you guys what it would typically look like. So I like having a calendar to, again, have that, you know, overview of my week, my month. Yeah, this was February. I guess it sucked. Yeah, I don't know. It looks pretty bad now that I look at it. I don't know how I survived. But yeah, so on the side, you can also see I have a bunch of like quick links to a bunch of things like all my classes and there's Zoom links, which is really helpful because I always lose those. So I have it for like, you know, my lectures, labs, anything relevant to that. So that's on the side. I didn't do the bottom part of this college page, but it's basically like, so you can see actually that this calendar is on the top. It's pulled from something called assignments, which is a database that I like created. It's a Notion thing. Basically, you can make databases and, you know, customize them a lot. So I have this one for all of the assignments that I have, and I list literally everything that I have to do for a class. And I basically have that database displayed in different ways on my Notion. So this first one is a calendar view because I like seeing calendars and having dates and days in front of me. Below that, sorry, I have it in a table format, and below that I have it in like a Kanban board format. So it's basically the same information with just like a little bit different like sorting and filters, but it's just kind of repeated. So I think that helps me like really ingrain, um, you know, what I have to, like, I see the big picture in this calendar. In one of the tables, I have what is due tomorrow, and below that, I have what is due in the week. So just viewing it different ways for me, like, helps me kind of, get it into my mind, like, hey, you gotta get this done. So this might seem repetitive to you. It works for me. Again, Notion is super customizable. You can do whatever the hell you want. So this is what I use. Um, so yeah, this is like the majority of my Notion. This is like my most visited pages, I guess. And that is all. Okay, it changed. So yeah, that's pretty much my talk on time management. Um, if you guys ever have any more questions or want to talk further about this, I am always available. I am on like Slack and Discord and everywhere. You can probably find me. But yeah, any other questions, comments, anything? Yeah, I was surprised actually. A lot of people didn't know about Notion. I did not find out about Notion until I found out about it through ACM actually when I first joined the board as secretary, like the previous secretary. Like they used to use Notion before for keeping like ACM things, like, we use Trello now because I think that's better, but yeah, we used to use Notion, so that's where I was first introduced to it. So yeah, it's really nice. Do I use timers? Yes, that app that you mentioned before, Forest. For those of you who don't know, Forest is it's really cute. It's sort of basically like a Pomodoro clock, but it's really nice looking. So let me see if I can pull it up. But basically, it's like you set a timer, you do your work, and at the end, you get a tree planted. So it looks like this. You can set a timer. You can choose the different kind of tree you want to plant. You can plant a bush. Oh no, wait. You can plant a bush if you want. And then you can see, okay, well, this is empty as hell, but you can see like your forest will start to build the more time that you spend working, and you can see like a bunch of trees on them too. So it's basically like a really aesthetic Pomodoro timer type of thing, but I really like it. I don't know if it's paid. I think it was paid, but it's only like $2. So, oh, Forest is free. Okay, never mind. There was another one I looked at that was not free. So, yeah. Are there any other questions? I am here. My wisdom is available to you all, whatever little I have of it. Yeah, Forest does cost you. I knew it. I knew it. My memory is not. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's $2. So, like, if you have money to spend, then yeah. But there's like a bunch of alternatives, honestly. Like, there's a lot of similar apps available. Yeah. And honestly, they're also like, they're also really easy to make. Like, Citrus Hack just happened, right? And I saw multiple projects that were like a similar sort of like, timer, Pomodoro type of thing. So yeah, if you want to make your own, you can do that too. Be ambitious if you want, I guess. Yeah. Do I keep timesheets for study time? Like recording like how much time I spent on everything? Uh kind of, not like super I don't do it that often, honestly. It's not like I do it for every little thing that I spend time on. It's more just like an estimation in my mind, like, hey, I'll spend this much time on something. And after I get it done, I'm like, oh, well, it took me like 2 hours or so. You know, it's not super strict. Um, if you're really looking to like really optimize your time, if you're, you know, when if your definition of time management is less about overcoming procrastination and more about like optimizing your time and really using it like to like the like you know really squeezing every minute out of the day, then using timesheets might be a lot helpful to track and just sort of record your progress and figure out how you're doing on that. But as college students, I think not a lot of us are at that point yet. I think we're more on the, oh God, I have to do things kind of phase. So there's this YouTuber, I think you guys might know. I think his name is, what's his name? It's the guy with he's like a med student and like he does like Notion stuff. What's his name? But he is a super good resource for if you're that kind of person, if you want to like optimize like everything that you do. He like goes through how he has this computer set up, what kind of apps he uses. It's like it was so crazy when I watched his video. He was like yes, him. Oh my God. It was like he won't click on any apps. He will just like search through everything. Like not like he'll like you know how on Macs you can search up like using the whatever the search thingy is called. I forgot what it's called. And he will just use that to switch to apps. Like he doesn't like waste time moving his mouse to go click on things because that takes up too much time of his day. I will never reach that point. But if you're really about like optimizing your time, check out his channel. It's really nice. And he has good tips on Notion too, actually. They're a lot more, I guess, like optimization focused, but they're still good. Yeah, he's like a med student or a doctor or something. So he's crazy. He does a lot of things. If there are no other questions, I'm gonna end this meeting here. Of course, you guys can reach out to me whenever for any kind of questions you just want to chat, whatever. I'm always here.